Before we get into it, I want to give a quick shout out to all the creators on Tradingview. Without their work, videos like this wouldn't exist. Today we're looking at 4 currently trending indicators, ranked from lowest to highest score. Clear breakdowns of what each one actually does, where the logic holds up, and whether any of them are worth adding to your charts. The RSI entry engine, created by Tradingview, is a smoothed RSI system built around extreme zone reclaim signals, trade projection boxes, and a compact status panel. The RSI calculation itself is more flexible than a standard implementation. The raw RSI can be smoothed with an EMA, SMA, or RMA before plotting, and a separate signal line is derived from that smoothed value using the same 3 options independently. That combination gives meaningful control over how reactive or smooth the final line feels without needing a separate indicator. The overbought, oversold, extreme high, and extreme low levels are all user-defined, separating the signal trigger zone from the general zone coloring. Signal logic is straightforward. A long fires when the smoothed RSI crosses back up through the extreme low level, and a short fires when it crosses back down through the extreme high. Trade boxes are drawn on the price chart at signal time with a configurable stop-loss mode using the signal candle, ATR, or a percentage distance, and a fixed risk to reward target. Active boxes extend bar by bar until TP or SL is hit, at which point a label marks the result. Same bar TP and SL conflicts are handled with a user-selectable priority. The status panel shows live RSI and signal values, a zone status label, a momentum direction derived from the 1-bar RSI delta, and whether RSI is above or below its signal line. It is readable and covers the essential state at a glance. This needs confirmation before you trade it. Without a trend filter, it fires in both directions, regardless of market conditions, so pairing it with a higher time frame EMA or a trend strength read like ADX will immediately improve signal quality by keeping you on the right side of the prevailing move. The default risk to reward of 5 is aggressive for a pure RSI reclaim signal and will produce a low hit rate on most instruments without additional confirmation. The smoothing flexibility and reclaim-based signal logic are sensible design choices that lift it above a basic RSI wrapper. The lack of any directional filter and the overly optimistic default risk-to-reward ratio limit its practical readiness as a standalone system. Analog Matcher, created by Gaines Algo, is a pattern recognition indicator that searches historical price action for the closest structural match to the current moment and projects what happened next directly onto the right side of the chart. The concept is pattern analog forecasting, a technique borrowed from meteorology and quantitative finance, applied here to raw price slope using linear regression. The matching engine runs a full linear regression on price against time across a user-defined look-back period, extracting the slope and R-squared value for each historical window. It then compares the current regression slope against every candidate in that history and finds the closest match within a slope tolerance threshold. In dual mode, it separates those matches into the best bullish and bearish outcomes, drawing both projections simultaneously so you can see what the chart did in each case. In single mode, it returns only the single closest match regardless of direction. The projected path is scaled to the current price level and rendered as actual candlestick boxes and wicks, which gives an immediate visual read on what the analog period looked like structurally. A small table shows the direction, bar index, timestamp, and a confidence score for each match. That confidence score combines slope similarity with R-squared alignment between the historical and current regression, producing a percentage that roughly describes how closely the 2 periods agree both in trend angle and linearity. This is not a standalone tool. It has no entry signals or risk management, so it works best alongside a primary system as a context layer. Use it to ask whether the current slope environment has historically resolved in your favor before committing to a trade your main indicator is already suggesting. The limitation is fundamental to the approach. Linear regression slope is a fairly coarse fingerprint for a price pattern. 2 periods with identical slopes can look completely different structurally, and the look-back is capped at 500 bars by default, which on higher timeframes covers very little history. Performance may also degrade on the last bar recalculation loop at scale. The analog projection idea is genuinely original in the retail indicator space, and the dual mode rendering is visually clean and immediately readable. The slope-only matching criteria is too shallow to produce reliable analogs consistently, and without deeper pattern similarity measures the confidence score can be misleading. Before we get to the top two, if any of these tools are leaving you wanting more from your charts, Quantum Ribbon Pro is a comprehensive trend trading system with basically everything you need. Link in the description. Let's continue. Machine Learning Supertrend is a self-tuning adaptive supertrend indicator built around a continuous background optimization engine that adjusts its own parameters in real time based on simulated trade performance. The foundation is a standard ATR-based supertrend, but the bandwidth and smoothing period adjust themselves over time rather than staying fixed. A background test matrix continuously simulates long and short positions, scores the results, and feeds those findings into an optimizer that proposes parameter changes, bar by bar. A master dial from 1 to 20 controls how aggressively the system adapts. On top of that, a regime grid builds a memory of which parameter adjustments worked well under specific market conditions. So when the market returns to a familiar state, the system draws on that history rather than starting from scratch. Signal generation sits separately from the adaptation engine. In reversal mode, a signal fires when the supertrend flips after a confirmed new high or low. In breakout mode, it fires when price pushes a new extreme in the direction of the current trend. RSI zone memory, volume surge filtering, minimum bar spacing, and a key levels filter based on ATR range all apply as optional gates. A risk guard system tracks session trade count, cumulative session loss, consecutive losses, and cooldown bars between entries. It can function as a standalone system given the depth of its built-in filtering, but adding a trend filter or key-level context is worth considering. The adaptation engine has no awareness of where price sits structurally, so signals can fire in technically valid conditions that are working directly against a major level or the broader trend direction. The practical limitation is verifiability. The adaptation engine is complex enough that its behavior is difficult to audit on a live chart, and the 5-bar simulated hold used for learning does not correspond to how any real trader would manage a position. The architecture is genuinely ambitious, and several components, particularly the regime grid and decay trace feedback, represent real engineering effort rather than cosmetic complexity. The gap between the internal simulation assumptions and real-world trade management is significant enough that the learned parameters should be treated as directional guidance rather than a reliable edge. Big order bubbles. IQ, created by Trading IQ, is a volume analysis indicator that identifies unusually large individual orders within each bar using lower timeframe data and renders them as sized, glowing bubbles directly on the price chart. The core engine pulls intrabar volume at a lower time frame, either auto-selected, 1 second, or 1 tick, and scans each sub-bar for orders that exceed a percentile threshold or a user-defined dollar amount. 2 identification modes control what qualifies. Turning Points filters candidates further by requiring Williams' percent range to be near an extreme, meaning it only highlights large orders that arrive at potential reversal zones rather than flagging every high-volume tick indiscriminately. Extreme Volume mode skips that filter and marks any order above the threshold regardless of where price is in its range. Bubble size scales relative to the largest and smallest detected orders in the visible window, so the visual weight of each bubble reflects its significance within the current context, rather than an absolute value. A separate histogram in the sub-pane accumulates total big buy and big sell volume per bar, giving a net directional read at a glance. A live tick mode is also available for real-time order detection without historical look-back, though it requires dollar amount filtering and loses all history on reload. The order table lists the most recent large orders with side, size, price, and time elapsed, with row colors gradient scaled to order size. An additional symbol input lets you overlay big order detection from a correlated instrument, useful for reading futures alongside spot or a sector ETF alongside individual names. This is a confirmation and context tool rather than a signal generator. It does not tell you when to enter, but it can meaningfully support a decision you are already leaning toward. A large buy bubble appearing at a key support level, your primary system is watching adds weight to a long setup in a way that standard volume bars cannot. The main practical limitation is the lower timeframe data dependency. On higher timeframes, the auto-selected sub-timeframe may be too coarse to capture meaningful intrabar order flow, and 1 second or 1 tick data requires a higher Tradingview plan tier. The Turning Points mode is a genuinely thoughtful design choice that separates this from a generic volume spike detector, and the bubble rendering is among the more visually polished implementations in this space. Usefulness scales heavily with plan tier and instrument type, limiting accessibility for traders without premium data access. We have recently introduced the complete QR Pro BST ecosystem. 1 workflow, 3 tools. Backtest your settings, scan for opportunities, and trade with confidence. Link in the description if you want to see how it works.